What's up guys, Tom Shepard here with the Inner Circle. We just wanted to cover a subject for you now in a couple of videos where we talk about deloading. So this is a subject that doesn't get covered a lot because at the end of the day, why would we want to talk about training less or going easy in our training or reducing our intensity and all that? That's not very hardcore, right? Everyone always wants to talk about being able to train more, being able to train hard, being able to train longer. When in reality, the longer that you train, the more important having a strategy for deloading and reducing the stress of your training load becomes. And you get to a point where you really need to end up having them in a periodical fashion so that you can continue to progress. So what we want to cover in this video is not only the types of deloads that we can do, how often we should put them into our training plan, but also the benefits that we get from them, and also then what they're going to affect in terms of what our programming looks like in a short term and a long-term capacity. So first off, why would we bother doing a deload? Now, what we see in a lot of people is those who don't have any kind of deload strategy built into their programming, or they don't schedule them at any point throughout the year, is at some point they end up happening for you anyway. Usually your body enforces one upon you if you don't schedule one in. Now, that could look like getting sick more frequently. It could look like injuries or niggles and things like that stop you training. But normally what happens is that if you don't have a deload strategy in place, your body will enforce one upon you one way or another. So what we want to see now is doing it in the most efficient way possible so that we can get the maximum benefit from them rather than being sidelined by something that we didn't control or didn't schedule for. So what am I going to get out of deloading? So if we're looking at hypertrophy, primarily, that's your primary goal in your training, then the thing that you really want to get from a deload is to restore your training sensitivity. So we're here. What we mean by training sensitivity is how our body responds to the stimulus that we're giving it. Now, we've all been in that scenario where we go on vacation for a few weeks, or maybe for some reason we have to take a short break from our training, whether we're moving house or something like that, and then we go back to the gym and we do a workout that would be a normal workout for us before that break, but now the day after and the days that follow that, we feel like we've been hit by a train. We're incredibly sore. We're not really able to train, go back in the gym and do anything productive because we're still recovering from that workout that we did, which normally wouldn't pose a problem for us. Two things have happened in this scenario. First off, we've lost a small amount of our recovery ability. So that's going to play a part there. But primarily what we're seeing here is that your training sensitivity has massively increased due to the break that you took from your training. So the same workout that before was maybe a small stimulus now represents a very large stimulus to your body. And obviously a large stimulus is going to take longer to recover from. Now, why is this important? Because over time, when you're training for hypertrophy especially, you're probably going to need to do progressively more volume or work at a progressively higher intensity to continue to get results. Now, obviously, we can't just do that forever. We're going to get to the point where there's only so much time we can spend in the gym, there's only so many work sets that we can do, and there's only so hard that you can push a set until you get to a point where all of those factors are kind of maxed out. So when you get to that point, what a deload is going to do is strategically resensitize your body to the training stimulus, which means then you're going to go back to getting results from a workout that maybe had stopped working for you before. Okay? So it basically creates a sustainable level of training stress for you to progress from, rather than having to infinitely do more to keep progress going. Now, if your goal in your training is more related to strength or performance, so the kind of typical example here would be like a strength sports athlete who needs to peak for a competition, what deloading is also going to do is resensitize your beta adrenergic receptors. So those are the receptors in your brain that respond to your own adrenaline. Now, as we go through intense training, we release adrenaline. Now, we need that to perform at a high level and do the things that we are asking of our body. But the downside to that is that over time, those receptors are going to desensitize because we're constantly throwing a lot of adrenaline at them. So what happens is we get to a point where we stop responding to our own adrenaline as well as we used to, and then our performance starts to drop off as a result of that. Now, what we commonly see in these scenarios is person has a couple of bad workouts, a couple of bad weeks maybe, they try to make up for that desensitization of the beta receptors, they might start using stimulants and all these types of things then to try and get their performance back to that level where it was. But all that's going to do, unfortunately, is going to desensitize them even further. I mean that at some point they're going to have to take an even longer break to get them to resensitize. At the end of the day, there is only so much caffeine and stuff that you can take, and it's going to give you a short-term benefit, but it's going to mean that it takes longer to get back to your previous level of performance when you stop using them. So if you're a strength athlete or performance is what you want from your training, that deload is going to mean that the amount of adrenaline that you're releasing into your system is going to lower. Those receptors are going to get bound to less, and then over time they will become more sensitive to that adrenaline again. And that is exactly what we see when we see lifters peak for a competition. They purposely bring down their training intensity and their training volume for anywhere between 7 and 14 days usually before the competition. Then what happens is they go into the competition and they perform at a high level. Now, they didn't get stronger during those 7 to 14 days. Usually at that point in time, their training is very maintenance. They're not really doing anything intense at all. All that we've actually done is restored their beta-adrenergic sensitivity, and it's allowed them to express the strength that they already have. Okay. Now, for more general population, for example, another thing that deload can do is just give you a bit of a mental break from the rigors of hard training. Now, training hard day in, day out, week in, week out is a bit of a slog. If you want to get meaningful results, then it is a bit of a marathon rather than a sprint. Now that over time can definitely take its toll, especially if you're someone who maybe enjoys the results of it more than the process. If you're not someone who just naturally loves to train, but is doing it for the results they get from the training, then training can start to take its toll a little bit as time goes on. So a deload at strategic times can be a great break for that person to step away from the gym for a week or two, or maybe just step in the gym less. And then when they come back to the gym, they're usually going to step back in with an increased figure, an increased amount of motivation to get back at it. Because usually what ends up happening is when you make that person take a break from the gym, they usually end up realizing that they actually enjoy it considerably more than they think they do, and they go back in with a new level of motivation and passion to continue progressing forward. Now, outside of that, another thing that can be a good benefit for deloads, this is more relevant for those who are training heavy or for strength, is that it also gives your soft tissues and tendons, ligaments, connective tissues a bit of a break from, again, the rigors of heavy training. Now, a lot of the time we can still be performing at a high level, we can feel fine, but we start to come down with things like tendinitis, tight muscles, etc., that inhibit our ability to perform in our training. Going through a week or so where we bring down the training intensity, maybe step away from the big barbell lifts that are causing the problems that we have, can give our body the chance to just rejuvenate and recover a little bit so that we can step back into that type of training now at full capacity and not being inhibited by anything. So those are the benefits that you can get from implementing some kind of deload strategy into your training program, or at least into your kind of training schedule in a more long term. What we're going to do in the next video then is look at the types of deloads that you can introduce to your training, and also then how often we need to do them. And then we'll also take a bit of a deeper look into the programming side of how we go about creating that deload.